This first section deals with scatterplots. To talk a little bit about scatterplots, we do need to understand the difference between the two variables that are being displayed or represented in the scatterplot. The first is the response variable or the dependent variable. This is the one that responds to the input, or in other words, it would be the output. The explanatory variable or the independent variable is the variable that's changing the response or the dependent variable. So, for instance, if we were talking about the height and weight of somebody, we could say, well, our height dictates our weight, or it influences our weight. If we're making that statement, then our height would be the independent variable or the explanatory variable, and our weight would be the dependent variable or the response variable. We will always plot the explanatory variable on the x-axis. So what we're going to be doing is making a graph. And a scatterplot is literally just taking and graphing the ordered pairs of two quantitative variables. So it is important that it is quantitative, which means they're both numbers. So if we do a scatterplot here, this is information about speed in relationship to the fuel that's being used. We do need to label our axes. So I'm going to put my y-axis there and my x-axis there. And I'm going to, let's see, we're going to put, in this case, we have speed and the fuel being used. So what we're looking for is the relationship. Does speed affect fuel? So our x-axis will be our speed, and our y-axis will be our fuel. So in this case, our speed is our independent variable, and our fuel is our dependent variable, or in other words, our speed is our explanatory variable, and speed is the fuel is the response variable. Let's go back to our scatter plot. Our speed is going up to 150, and it looks like I have a definite at least 15 here, so I'm going to do each of these and go by tens. You should label all of them. I'm just going to do a couple. If you wanted to, you wouldn't necessarily have to label all of those. So it'll be 10 and 20, indicating that we're going by 10. So each of these are 10s. Our fuel being used, it looks like our minimum is around is the 5.9, the maximum is 21. I'm going to go by 2s. So our scatterplot literally is just graphing those points. So 10, I get 21, just about there. 20 is 13. 30 is 10. 40 is 8. 50 is 7. 60 is 5.9. 70 is 6.3. 80 is 6.95. 90 is 7.5. 100 is 8.27, and these again are just estimates, so it's in between 9.03. So I'm going to pause and finish this. Okay, so this one I did move one down. I gotten off. Whereas if you label your axis, it does become easier to graph these. So this is what our scatter plot looks like. We're going to talk about this one after go over some vocabulary. So we can talk about its form, its direction, and its strength. Again, it's important to talk about an outlier. So we're going to look at this one. I would say that their first point here looks to be an outlier. Doesn't really fit with the rest of the graph, which seems to be a smooth curve. So I would consider that 1021 liters of fuel being used would be an outlier. Talking about direction, so they're positively associated when high values of two variables tend to occur together. What that would look like is, so as my x is getting bigger, so are my y values. Now this could be a smooth curve, it could be a straight line, it could be another shape. Negative association, same idea, but so high values of one tend to occur with low of the other, so it's going down. So these, as the x is getting bigger, the y's are getting smaller. Then the strength is determined by how close the points lie to a simple form, such as a line. It doesn't have to be a line, it could be a curve. And where in this case, I would say that this, with the exception of our outlier, these are fairly close together. So I'd say this has a strong association with one another. It doesn't have positive or negatives. Notice here it's going down. So on this part, we're going down. And then on this side, it's going up. So this would not be positively or negatively associated. However, I would say if I had to name this one, I would say it's a quadratic because of its parabola-shaped relationship. And again, because these points are very closely related, I would say they have a strong relationship. Let's do a scatter plot two different ways, because as you can see, doing it by paper pencil method might take a little bit of time. So let's go to our Excel program, and you can open up this data in yours as well. You can find the file online. So this is given our year, number of boats that are registered in thousands, and the number of manatees that are being killed. The year is not really affecting the information as much as if we're concerned about the manatees, which seems to be the relationship is the number of boats increase, the manatees seem to increase. So to make a scatterplot of these, you're going to highlight those two categories. Our explanatory variable, or x, would be the number of boats that are being registered, and our response is the number of manatees being killed. You're going to do insert, and this one over here is scatter, and we're going to choose the first one, which is scatter. And it will make a scatter plot for you. Now, just like before, you can change the colors and that sort of thing. So this is ours. I did make it a little bit bigger. Let's talk a little about these. It does look like it has a linear relationship. It is a positively association because as the number of boats go up, so do the number of manatees being killed in general. It's a fairly strong relationship. Now, mind you, if you were to change your axes here and go by different amounts, these would be clustered closer together or further apart depending on what you decided for your increments. Now let's talk about our graphing calculator here. You're going to go Stat, Edit, put in your data into list 1 and list 2. I've already done that for us. go to second stat plot. We're going to choose the first one. Of course, we want to turn it on because we want to graph. And the first one here is a scatter plot. I want my x's to be my list 1 and the y's to be my list 2, because in the list 1 I put the number of boats that were being registered, and the y list or list 2 is the number of manatees. I'm probably going to want to adjust my window here. And let me take a look at the data quickly. We're going to use this. So the number of powerboat registrations seem to go in the 400s to 700. So I'm going to go 400 to 800. I'm going to mark them by 50s. And then the manatees being killed. Looks like 13 is the smallest and 50 is the largest. So I'm gonna go 55. This one I'm gonna go by 5s. So when I graph, this scatter plot looks similar to the one that we did on Excel. Let me get these side by side. So that's how you can do a scatter plot on your calculator as well.